All right, I'm with Brock Colterjohn, CEO of Onyx Gold. ONYX is the symbol on the TSX venture. We're going to delve into Onyx and some of the news the company has had out in the last couple of months. We'll start with a news release in June where Onyx announced an expansion to its property package near the Timmins Camp in Ontario. So, Brock, how are you? And tell us about the expansion of the property there in Timmins.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Hi, everyone, and thanks, Rob, for bringing me on to your interviewing me. I really appreciate you taking the time to do so. Yeah, we're really excited about this property acquisitions. It's been a part of a multi-year strategy of consolidating really prospective ground in the Timmins area, especially around our Munro-Croesus properties. We've done almost 30 deals to consolidate our Munro-Croesus property. And in 2019, it was about 4 square kilometers. Now it's 109 square kilometers. So, you know, that's a really big property now. And as we've been acquiring these properties, we've been inheriting these fabulous gold targets that have been underexplored or haven't been explored in many decades. So with these 2 additional properties, they added more targets. It consolidates these geological trends that have been a key focus of us. So in this case, you know, the pipestone, which is a northern splay of the Porcupine Destor, it's a crustal scale, big, large structure that is known to host multi-million ounce deposits in the Timmins Camp, including the Fengib deposit, which is 6 kilometers away from our Argus discovery. So we took that view of consolidation many years ago, as I mentioned, and the idea was, you know, as others were kind of starting to exit from the camp, we were kind of counter-cyclical. We took the view of saying, you know, Canada's largest gold producing region, you know, the Abitibi is 90% of Canada's gold production historically to date. Within that Abitibi, the Timmins Gold Camp, 80 million ounces production is by far the biggest gold camp. So we love the geological potential. It's got obviously proven ounces in the ground, proven history of production. But there was a lot of areas that were held back because of various reasons. So in the case of this Munro-Croesus property, it was really held back because of people. So we control this mine called the Croesus mine. It was the highest grade past producing mine in Ontario. It produced spectacular gold grades, but that was in production 100 years ago, and that created a massive staking rush of patent claims that we've been unwinding. So we've done deals with families that have had for over 3 generations, 100 years, with no work on it, even though it's, you know, the properties are overlying or very proximal to, you know, these known structures and great targets around them. So that was our strategy was, you know, consolidate fabulous, you know, geology and strong potential for new discoveries, and then apply modern technology and thinking to, you know, geology and exploration principles, and then validate it through the drill bit. And sure enough, you know, this strategy is bearing fruit. We've made 3 new greenfield discoveries on this greater land position that has been explored off and on for 100 years.
So one of the properties that you acquired is 200 hectares, and it's inside of your existing, like, your boundaries essentially, and it looks like there's 2 former mines on this property. Can you tell us about that, when they operated and when they shut down? And this looks like a cash deal, is that right? You know, you're just paying straight cash for it?
Yeah, it's a straight cash deal, and it's the Munro property. It did have historical production. There was an old asbestos mine that was mining the ultramafics in the area, and so that's a kind of a key. These horizons are very important within the Timmins, about ultramafics along with volcanics, you know, basalts and all that stuff, all mixed together. And those areas tend to be really good hosts of gold mineralization in the camp. But for them, that was in the production in the 50s to the 70s, large open pit, underground asbestos production. But what's really neat about it, you know, it's been subsequently reclaimed, all that stuff. The mill building's gone and everything's been reclaimed. And so that's been good. And, you know, we spent many years kind of looking at it, doing our due diligence, making sure the environmental makes sense. And so, you know, we feel comfortable with the position. But what the opportunity of this property, in addition just to consolidating and you know, making the property a one coherent piece of claims, is you go back to that production, And this area of Timmins, of the camp had its that Croesus the early 100 years ago in the 1915 to 1920s were all about gold exploration, and then it pivoted when asbestos was discovered in the 30s and 40s, and then gold kind of just fell by the wayside in terms of opportunity or interest. So for the sake of the asbestos production, that history, you go look through the old reports, and they're drilling through all these ultramafics and to different geological units, and they're never sampled for gold once, despite you can see all the recommendations from from the authors of these technical reports that strongly suggest to assay for gold, but never did, because they were an asbestos mining company, and that was the thing that was making the money, and didn't really bother to look into that. So that's the key thing, and one particular part that of interest for us geologically is the Croesus flow. So it's a pillow basalt. It is the known host of the Croesus mine, so that historic past producing mine that does spectacular gold grades. So that actually trucks onto this property that we just consolidated, and it's never been actually drilled or looked for gold. So that's opening up that perspective, horizon that's got favorable hosts for gold, and we also. It's also within that same unit as that GM vein discovery we made in late 2023, which is also, like I said, it's 350 meters away from the historical Croesus mine in the same unit, and it's a parallel vein to the historic mine. So it opens up a massive strike extent of this favorable host for additional potential discoveries that, like I said, haven't been looked for a very long time, because these properties have been tied up under that asbestos company since the late 40s, early 40s type of era. So it's been a long time. So we're really excited about that, extending the gold potential there.
That's very interesting that they didn't assay for gold, and that's not the first time I've heard a story like that where the geos were like, yeah, you should assay this for gold, and they didn't, just because it cost more money and it wasn't the focus of the operations at the time. And also back in the 40s and 50s, gold was quite a bit cheaper than it is now. So I guess you'll be assaying for gold at some point in the future there on those claims. So then at the end of June, you had an incredible set of results, holes 168, holes 171, basically following up on that incredible 3.4 grams over 70 meters in hole 163 at the Argus North Zone. So tell us about the up-dip step outs that you hit in holes 168 and holes 171.
Yeah, for sure. So the idea was we had that discovery hole 163, almost 70 meters of 3.4 grams. So it was one hole. We wanted to expand it. So the first thing we did was let's do offensive holes, up dip, down dip of 163, and figure out the vertical continuity. So with the results that we announced to date on that section, we had a really nice, two step outs of 30 meters and a 50 meters, so about 80 plus meters up dip of the original discovery hole, and they came back some really good grades, right? So that's just it validates that 163 is not just a one-hit wonder, but also what we're seeing is that what we're intersecting is actually really interesting too. Is it's all within the same host rock, the variolitics, but within there's subunits within that bigger package, and what we're seeing is some really strong alteration and sulfide mineralization within this fragmental. It's a fragmental brecciated volcanics. It's a variolitic breccia. It looks highly brecciated. And it's quite big. So, and that's what's hosting, the 168 in particular mineralization, and it's really nice to see. And you look at the geometry of it, and it looks parallel to the stratigraphy and the major structures. So this is 150 meters north of the pipestone. So could this tectonic or polylithic fragmental breccia be a really good favorable host for gold mineralization, because it's obviously been broken up, so it's more permeable than the rest of the host rock. So fluids like to hang out there better, and you start to see that, and it's validated through the alteration and the sulfides. So that opens up a really interesting corridor, and especially, like I said, the geometry of this fragmental unit is parallel. So it could be, it's early days, we're still validating this, but could it be a northern splay of the pipestone? And obviously, if that's the case, that opens up a significant footprint in terms of scale, right? Because these are big structures, big plumbing systems that you typically need to see for these big orogenic gold systems, right? So that's what gets us excited. As been stepping out, we are seeing this fragmental unit, and so I mean, like I said, it's early days. We've had 9 holes reported to date. That first press release you mentioned in the end of June, it validates now we have 100 meters of vertical continuity of really nice mineralization. It's also, like I said, as we drill, it's providing more data about the geometry and potential scale. So that's great. And then yesterday we can segue into this, but the next step was to show what's the continuity of mineralization along strike, right?
Okay, yeah. So when I look at the section maps from the end of June showing holes 63, 71, et cetera, I noticed that it looks like there's pinching and swelling here, okay, in this structure, in this gold-bearing, structure. So there's a much fatter zone that's like 100 or so meters deep that's carrying 2 grams or 2.5 grams per ton grade. And then based upon the drawing, it seems like it tightens up and it gets a bit, narrower, a bit, more narrow as you get to depth. So can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so it looks like to depth is completely open, and these type of systems, especially in the Timmins area, these orogenic gold systems across the world have a very nature of pinching and swelling, right? So that's the first point I would say. We see it with Argus Main that we were defining over some 750 meters by 200 meters lens at Argus Main Zone, and so yeah, it basically has to do with fluid flow, right? Because this is not orogenic gold veins, right? This is which do pinch and swell, but this is more of a hydrothermal, it's gold replacement style type of system. So when the fluids are permeating up these structures and they're hitting a favorable host, they tend to follow obviously the path of least resistance, right? So you go back to that fragmental unit that I mentioned, when you see the big blowout of the fragmentals, you can also see big zones, right? So and so that's just basically because it's more permeable, so the fluids can bleed out and you get these bigger scale stuff. But also 163, that original discovery hole, has very little fragmentals and still it's our best hole of Argus North. So so it doesn't always have to be the case of stratigraphy and what is a favorable host rock, but it's more just has to do with fluid flow, right? Where it can go through, what's the paleo topography back when these things were forming, and not to get too technical. So as you drill, you get more informed about how it can pinch and swell. You understand the structures that it can be associated with. So the more data you get, the more informed we can be about understanding and targeting the areas that typically will swell and pinch. But it's very characteristic of what you see, on these type of gold camps around the world. So, and they also, the other thing to note when you look at the section, it looks like some of those the whole 40 hole 140, once there's an extension of it's got 43 meters of 0.9. That looks like it could be a little bit of the lower end of the plunge. So, like it's also, cross sections, you can't see a plunge, right? So, and that's the other case as well, about that situation too. So, we're really excited. And I think, we're really defining the geometry of this thing, and it is completely open down plunge and down dip. So, we don't see any issues of continuing to expand this thing.
So at the Argus North zone, it seems to me you've drilled out an area that's about maybe 300 or so meters wide, and the vertical extent is more than 100 or so meters, and you've had 10 or so intercepts of 1.5 grams, 2 grams, or 2.5, 3 grams, in that range. That's pretty impressive. That's a pretty good sized area. And so now the next question is, where do you step out and how do you expand this along strike? And will you continue to test it at depth down plunge? Is this going to be, like an underground target possibly where the grade will get better, as you go deeper?
Yeah, no, for sure. So maybe just to highlight yesterday's press release that can go lead into all your questions is basically, we announced another 5 holes, and basically they're all in a 50-meter step out fence to the east of our original discovery fence. And so basically that validated that the system is open along strike. We're adding continuity along strike, but we also brought it towards surface. So we have over 50 meters of almost 2 grams sitting less than 4 meters below surface, right? So basically the zone started right out of casing. So that's going to be an area that is going to be a focus of trenching that we can talk about later on. But so now what you see with the 2 press releases, we have 9 holes out. We have demonstrated vertical continuity from 200 meters of vertical to surface, and also a long strike of over 50 meters, and it's completely open along strike and down plunge. So, so 2 grams right at surface, 2 kilometers away from the highway that leads to 6 hungry mills in Timmins. That's really robust type of mineralization, right? So that's over $200 in terms of in situ value sitting on surface when it probably costs you $20 to mine, process, truck and process, right? So your margins are fantastic, and that old asbestos mine I mentioned actually brought in a paved road even to the heart of our property. So, it's only 2 kilometers away from a highway and just off a paved road as well. And so this is a fabulous place to be discovering, because those ounces are extremely economic. And what are the value, what's the premium you would get from, an incumbent or, within the camp that's got a hungry mill, and they don't have to build that mill or tailings facility. It's on patent claims 2 kilometers away from, so infrastructure is going to be relatively easy to do and very low cost. So they're willing to pay much higher per ounce than anything you'll get basically around the world. So we're really excited about that. And then the other thing is within those big, 1.5 to 3 gram, big, 50 to 70 meter type of wide widths, we're also getting some really strong, 5+ gram intervals that are running 17 18 meters to 35 meters, right? And that's now $500+ in situ value. And that is great underground mining widths. Like I worked at Young-Davidson as a geologist, and that's 117 kilometers south of this discovery by road, and they're down over 1.5 kilometers vertically, mining 8,000 tons per day underground, and their average grade is about 2.5 grams, right? So that you put that at 5 grams, basically starting from surface down to 200, and it's completely open. It dramatically opens up that envelope that we can add ounces, right? Because those type of grades are extreme, and widths are extremely economic in this camp. So give you reference. Discovery, they just bought the assets, the Porcupine complex from Newmont for $425 million US. One of their high grade hub and spoke mines is Borden, and Borden's 240 kilometers away from their milling complex in Timmins, and the average grade is between 5 and 6 grams, right? So, and they're making a lot of money off of that mine. So imagine what 5 grams could do. That's 65 kilometers away from the mill, right? So I think that the context is everything, and that's what gets us really excited about this type of discovery. Timmins hasn't had a discovery like this in many years. That's completely greenfield, so close to infrastructure, right? 2 kilometers away from a highway, and it's surrounded by right across the highway from a producing mine, and this property's got a tremendous amount of historic production on it, right? So it's the perfect recipe to making a great discovery, but also to garner the highest premium for those ounces given all that setup, right? So like I said, just to recap is we got 9 holes, 7 of the 9 to date are over 90 gram meters to 200, almost 240 gram meters. When I was a research analyst working on the sell side, you tried to look at what were type of deposits that could grow, from these type of discovery results. What do they look like? To backtrack, you look at these multi-million ounce deposits in Canada and you say, okay, what were the original discovery holes that led to that, multi-million ounce discovery? Is there some drill holes or constant drill holes that give you that indication of, that could be a big deposit? And anything around 100 gram meters is really showing you something that could be a system that has scale, right? And so to date, we have 7 of the 9 that are 90 to 240 and completely open. So we're that just goes to show this is a really good discovery. Like I said, it goes from surface down to 200 meters vertically. We got 26 drill holes drilled to date. 9 have been announced. We're about 9,000 meters through our 10,000 meter program, which we also announced yesterday. We're increasing up to 25,000 meters, and that's about $5 million program. And we have about $10 million of flow through, so we can drill 50,000 meters, without having to really look at it. So we got a lot of drilling to do here, and to also just step back, Argus North was discovered by drilling, right? There was nothing on surface or in geophysics that was saying, hey, there's a really nice gold system sitting right below a couple meters of overburden. It was drilled because we were doing systematic drilling at the Argus main, and so we hit it by drilling basically by accident. Imagine what we can start to do with a massive budget, right? We can, because we have this huge strike extent of these major structures that have been basically not drilled at all. And so as we drill, the more informed we get, the more data we can get, the more analysis we can do, which increases our ability to find more, right? So, and that's our position right now. And at a market cap of where we're at, and the drilling and the news flow, I think we got a pretty exciting second half of this year and beyond.
Well, I mean, there's no doubt that the Argus North zone, the average grade that you've drilled to date, in my mind, has got to be economic, and maybe very economic, quite frankly. If we look over at the Argus main zone, which is a much larger area than you've stepped out at so far at North, the grades vary quite a bit. It seems like there's some grades that are 0.4, 0.5 grams gold. There's some holes that are a gram gold, some pretty wide intervals of a gram at the main zone. What do you think the threshold is that you need to hit to be economic here at this project? Is it a half gram or is it a gram?
It's a good question, because I think the threshold used to be a 1 gram, but given where the gold price is, and if it continues to stay this way, even 0.6 half gram is $50 US, right? And here you can mine for 20 bucks Canadian, right? Or $20, call it round up, $20 US. So you still have a $30 US margin to mine half gram open pit in Timmins, right? And then obviously those are subjected to recoveries and all that stuff. There's and royalties. There's that it's not an actual there's your margin, but that just gives you an idea of how economic even low grade is in a mature camp, right? That just gives you a sense. So even 6 kilometers away is Fen Gibb's 4.5 million ounces of 0.8 plus, and they got well over 220 million market cap. So clearly the market's still valuing a sub-gram open pit project, right? So there's a lot of value there, and I think what Argus is interesting is because Argus has been defined, like I said, it's a 750 meter long lens by 200 meters. And there's only about 15 holes, about 5,400 meters that have defined that. And that's just been, 3 drill campaigns in late 2022, capital constrained. It was discovered under high gold. This property was a non-core because they're focused all their efforts in Alaska. And as you know, Alaska is expensive to operate. So it's hard to allocate a lot of capital towards a Timmins, Ontario property, even though they loved it. And then Onyx was spun out, and we were a pretty small company that was capital constrained. So we've had small drill budgets, and we were able to define a big system. So some of those grades are variable, yes, but they're also 100-meter step outs between each hole. So there's a lot of, it's a limited data, right? Like we have this big budget. Can we start to track, east from Argus North and say, okay, well, there's only 1 drill hole within 100 meters of either side, and there's nothing to the north where we're discovering this stuff. Can we do more fences and see what happens? You're on the favorable horizon, you see interesting things. So that's what we're excited about, is you can finally have that drill budget. And like I said, Argus North was discovered because as we were drilling, doing those big 100-meter step outs in 2023 and early 24, we were starting going from a half gram to a gram system. And that was interesting because the zone at Argus Main was getting stronger as the zone looked like it was converging with the pipestone, which is exactly what we wanted to see. And that's what you see at Fen Gib, 6 kilometers away. So that was giving us a lot of confidence. Okay, this is starting to become a really interesting bulk tonnage system. And that's when we tagged into, while we were drilling, around that 1 gram discovery that we made in 2024. We, obviously tagged into to Argus North, and then the rest has been history, right? So that was the evolution of the discovery. So it's been so new, but also very limited budgets. And so now, go back to this. We got, we just reported our MD&A and financials, and we have still $11.5 million in cash, war chests of flow through, and that's after drilling, all the bills that come in for a significant portion of this 10,000 meter budget, right? So we're really excited.
So pouring over all your maps and diagrams and cross sections and long sections, my opinion, Brock, is you should start to step to the west because of where the old pits are over there, following the pipestone fall. It just seems logical that you got to follow this thing to the west. So tell me if I'm right or wrong there.
No, you're certainly right. There's a fault, northeast trending fault called the Barton Creek, and that could be another discussion because it's a very interesting structure that we're learning a lot from. That could be maybe a host of mineralization, which was completely overlooked for many years because it was the fault was in a direction that was always thought to be too young. But you get across that, and then there's this 950 meter long ridge of varolitic basalt, which is the host rock of Argus and Argus North. And it's never been drilled before. And our geologists last year, we're taking some grab samples as they were mapping last year, and we're getting, 2.5 grams from grab sample, just, randomly from outcrop that's 500 meters to the west of the drilling that we've been just discussing, right? So this completely opens this huge footprint of opportunity, and that's what gets a lot of people excited. You look at these maps and you're like, hold on, how has this never been drilled before, right? And it just goes back to the legacy of these claims that have just been, overlooked for so long, and so now we're starting to really look at that as a drilling opportunity. So we're excited to be drilling over there, and yeah, so stay tuned because it significantly broadens that envelope of mineralization, right? So it turns in from you add Argus main, which is 750 meters kind of by 200 meter lens. You get across the fault, and then, like I said, there's a 950 meter long outcrop that we control that is running some good juice. It's got the alteration, the same host rock, proximal to the pipestone, all the check, you're checking all the boxes here for the potential for additional mineralization, but just completely untested. So that's the upside. That's how we continue to take re-rate is to further expand this discovery. So part of this 25,000 meter budget is obviously continue to do these step outs at Argus North, Argus Main, the Argus West, like this whole general Argus region. But I'm really excited about is we got 35 targets across this 109 square kilometer property. These targets we've been inheriting from 1 gram to 2,500 grams sitting in a vein that a prospector in the early 90s blew up and got some beautiful visible gold. And all of this hasn't been tested by Onyx and hasn't been tested in decades, sometimes in 30-40 years. So that's what I'm really excited about is we have this huge pipeline of targets that we just haven't been able to get to because we were a small company and capital constrained, and focus where we know where we can add value, and that was Argus and that GM vein that I mentioned, the high grade vein 350 meters away. So that's what I love to start allocating that drill budget to start testing these amazing targets that just have been sitting there for a while. So we're really excited about it. We have 2 drill rigs sitting on the property here. We're expanding our infrastructure and team, so we can potentially grow from there as well. And we have the budget to do so. So stay tuned. Like I said, we're going to be we got a lot of meterage to go through. We have a lot of holes over. This is a fabulous time to be looking at our story, right? Because we're making, material discovery in a world-class mining camp, and we've seen, where the best premiums, the biggest takeouts in recent years been gold discoveries in the Abitibi, right? So, Great Bear, the Cisco mining, or just as a whole, Canadian gold discoveries, Snowline and how well they've done, right? So, there's a significant interest in new gold discoveries in Canada, but the ones that are around by existing mills, infrastructure, people, more streamlined permitting familiar stakeholders that companies can actually execute with. That's what draws a lot of premiums, right? And when you find something that is multiple grams over significant widths, that just even sweetens it. And we have this huge hunting ground. We have, as we're consolidating, you go back to where we originally started this conversation about consolidation. This pipestone I keep talking about, and we used to own a very little part of it. And since 2019, with this consolidation, we own 8 kilometers of strike length of this pipestone that is grossly underexplored, right? So, those type of stories like the Great Bears and all that stuff, they did so well is because they had that multiple kilometer strike extent potential. And as you drill and, lower cost of capital, you can bring more money in, you drill bigger budgets, you just keep stepping out and you keep finding high grade repeating shoots. And then it came, the whole thing kind of self-fulfilling, right? And it came out for a $1.8 billion acquisition. So, that's, I don't want to compare myself to Great Bear, of course, because it's so early days. I would never do that. But the setup is what you want to see: big, long structure, known to host multi-million ounce deposits, and a new discovery that is high grade, and it's got a fabulous plunge to it. And now can we start to find multiple of those in addition to expanding the one we already found?
Yeah, I mean, that's why I'm talking to you, because it's a relatively tight share structure with a strong management team and good results straight out of the gate at a new target area and a great gold camp. I mean, it definitely checks a lot of boxes. So what I heard you say there is, I think you're saying, yeah, you are going to start moving to the west there, following that pipestone fault to the west. How do you balance staying in the core area and not stepping out too much and making it too much of a gamble, as opposed to, you have a very large property package with all these different fault structures going right through the property. You've got a bunch of faults where there's a confluence of faults across the property, including the pipestone north fault. So how do you balance the budget in terms of gradually starting to step out from the main area of focus and trying to explore this full property package?
No, for sure. It's a good question. So the first priority is to obviously expand, Argus North and Argus Main, but particularly Argus North in the near term here. And, doing those 50-meter step outs, long strike, down plunge, really figure it out. And then do the stripping, because obviously, stripping is fantastic. If you can really see it on surface, you see 3-dimensional structures, right? So that gives you a lot of information as well. But the bigger picture is, as you've been drilling this discovery, you start to really get that database, right? And so you can start to break out, geochemistry between subunits of the Varolitics, alteration, and understand the structural regime a little bit better. So once you learn all that while expanding this new discovery, you can start to say, okay, well, like I mentioned, we got 8 kilometers of this with some, multi-kilometer outcropping Varolitics. Let's start applying some of this knowledge now that we've gained to see how we can target those, for repeating plunges and mineralization along this, right? So let's be disciplined, figure out, learn it, and then take those lessons and principles and, getting consultants in and understand the structural regime, get the best people possibly can to get on this. We have a fabulous team, but I'm a view of, we don't have an ego. The more eyes that can see this, the better, because, geology is ultimately a black box. There's no, 2 things are alike in the world. So, the more eyes we can have on this, the better we learn, the faster we learn, the more we can take these principles and new techniques and go out and target for more of this along strike. And so, yeah, I think just to kind of summarize it is basically be disciplined, learn the information, and then once we feel comfortable, peel one of the rigs off, keep one rig on, because we have 2 right now, and then, keep the one drilling Argus North to continue to expand it, but then have the other one to start learning, taking some of those principles and applying them along strike that are big step outs, a couple 100-meter step outs, right? And then if we like what we see, we have the ability to ramp up even more from there, which we're excited about. So,
do you feel like you have any other targets that are more far flung across the property that are advanced to the stage that you could send, rig over there at some point in the next year?
Yeah, no, absolutely. We have, 15 plus targets that are drill ready. In addition, we want to follow up on, we talk about Argus a lot, but we made that high grade vein discovery. The GM vein, it was the first time in 100 years that somebody's been able to find a new parallel high-grade vein from Croesus. It's got spectacular visible gold. It's about 55 meters below surface, completely open in multiple directions. So we would love to expand that as well, because high grade is, veins are smaller tonnage but great grade, and it's shallow, so it makes sense to continue to chase it. And also, like I said, after that property acquisition, we've opened the strike extent of that favorable host by several kilometers. So we're really excited about that as well. But yeah, there's bulk tonnage targets that look to be associated with some major structures that are overlooked. There's one zone called the Flipper Zone that we like. It was drilled in 2003 was the last time, and had a gram over 43 meters just south of Argus. Never followed up since 2003, so that's a juicy area that looks pretty interesting. But then we have all these high grades. So the fact that we actually have high grade veins and bulk tonnage, systems, just goes to show that the mineral endowment on this property is pretty incredible, right? And that's what gets the attention of corporates. The gold fields, they look at this. Okay, you're consolidating. They're 9 of us, and you're take out big step outs. You're exploring something on these consolidated land positions that were independently explored, right? And the analogy I like to talk about is you have this scramble of puzzle pieces, right? And you don't know what to actually the picture looks like. And so as you can consolidate each claim, you put another puzzle piece together, and you finally we're basically have this nice pretty homogeneous property now, and you could basically see what the puzzle actually is trying to depict, right? What is the picture? And so now we can see a lot of these things that were independently explored probably weren't explored all that effectively because they didn't have that macro scale understanding of what maybe the structures were doing, right? You're just looking at a target within a couple hectare claims, or so they weren't having to have that ability to really execute on a larger scale to see the big picture. So we love that holistic approach and exploration. And so as we've been doing that, we have all these targets that we're really excited about, and we have a slide in our presentation. It's kind of called the greatest hits, and you'll see these pipeline of targets of 35 plus that we would love to drill. And that's, like I said, there's a bunch of them, but in the near term we can drill many that are drill ready. So we're excited about that, and we got to balance the right approach with staying the course of following up and expanding these discoveries that we really like. And excited about. The market clearly is rewarding for, and they're clearly going to be valuable, continue to be valuable. And then, can we continue to start drilling this organic, bring in more targets? And, I would love to, for shareholders one day to wake up to a new discovery and they say, hey, what the heck is that, right? So
a completely new zone, that they haven't heard of.
Yeah, keep everybody on their toes, right? So you always want to hold the Onyx paper because you never know what you're going to get one morning, right?
So speaking of the share price and the company, so I saw you in Scottsdale, Arizona at some point in April. I believe the share price was about 45 cents or so at that time. I think the share price at the start of the year was probably in the 20s. So this has been a great year for shareholders. I mean, it's more than a 10x. If you were holding the stock in January, but it becomes a little harder to move the needle as the share price goes up. So we saw a little bit of a pullback here in the last day. It got up above 250 on Wednesday morning. We're pulling back to about $2 now. From my perspective, it's just normal stock market activity where you're going to have a pullback at some point. You're going to have some people taking advantage of the news and taking profits. But I kind of want to hear your take on the share price and how you manage, your emotions.
No, it's been a roller coaster, that's for sure. But you mentioned we've obviously had a great run, and we've been really happy with the performance to date, and it's a testament of our share structure, the free flow, the news flow management team. I tip my hat to my team and our ability to execute, and that's been great. But the thing I would notice is people might look at the percentage gain and say, it's over, right? But we went off of such a low base in terms of market cap, right? So even now we're sub 150 million, 140, 50 million around in that range. We've seen where discovery stories can go, right? So even though you might think you might have lost, it might have been almost 10x, but we are still at such an attractive valuation, right? And you've seen, where the founders metals go, the Goliaths, the snow lines, the list goes on, where you kind of get your initial leg up, and then you can kind of execute, drill, and then you get your continued next legs up. So, I think this is still a fabulous, valuation to be seeing, because especially, for how much news flow and what we're going to be doing in the months to come. So, so it's certainly not too late, and pullbacks are always a healthy thing, right? Because there's always buyers and sellers. I don't take it too personally at all, because there's always, that's the simplicity of a stock, right? And this pullback is certainly presenting a buying opportunity for the next wave of news, and of shareholders who are interested, of saying, yeah, I see value here, and I like this story, what I hear, and I'm willing to buy and participate in this, right? So I don't blame anyone for selling on strength. That's great. I'm happy they made money, and I hope it just goes to the next person who thinks they can make money as well, right? So
yeah, a pullback gives an opportunity to new shareholders to come in at maybe a good entry point. So there's two sides to every coin. Final question, Brock. I always like to try to get as much information from a CEO as possible while I have you. So what kind of news can we expect from the company over the next couple of months? What can you tell us about how many holes are still pending, and they're still at the lab, and where are the rigs going?
Yeah, no, for sure. So we announced in our news release yesterday, we said we've completed 26 holes and about 9,000 meters of the 10,000 meter phase 1 program, which we now announced the increase to 25,000 meters. So, you can see how many holes we'll likely do this year, which is a significant amount of holes. We have 2 drill rigs right now, focus on Argus North. We're really excited about testing Argus West in the near term here, and then we will continue. I think we'll have something on Argus North for many months to come. So forward-looking statement, but we have to, obviously result driven. Do we continue to scale up, right? That's the thing about Timmins is, it's a fabulous place. Drillers live 45 minutes away. They can just drive. We can, pop up another drill rig and hit the ground running pretty easy. It's, and it's one of the cheapest places to drill in Canada, if not the world. So we can really scale up, and, money goes a long way here. So, then we'll start testing these regional targets that I mentioned. So in addition, we'll look to continue to, we're doing that mechanized stripping that should be starting inwardly here. We'll have an excavator coming in and opening up. It's only a couple meters overburden, so it shouldn't be overly difficult to do. And it'd be fabulous to see some great looking intrusions and variolytics all popping around with gold, and that would be really exciting, because it comes right at surface, which is pretty rare in Timmins. Normally they're sitting under a swamp or a sand esker. You can't strip, which is another unique situation. And then we're also continuing we're going to bring in some geophysics, so do some high res ground IP. This part of Argus and Argus North has 200 meters center spacing of the ground lines from what we did in 2021 or into 2022. So we'll do that, increase the resolution here to 50 meter centers. That will help, and then we're going to expand the geophysics along strike of the major structures, the pipestone, and see how that could additionally aid the drill bit with all the information we've been gathering on top of that. So lots of stuff to come here. Really excited. I mean, this is like I said, I was a research analyst, and it's always rare to find these type of Canadian news story, new gold discoveries, and especially one in something like Timmins, where Timmins was kind of a little bit on its back step for some years, and with Discovery Silver coming in, I think they're going to really reinvigorate the camp here. Obviously, McEwen's been there for some years. They're looking to grow around their surrounding mines. So you've seen the roll up theme in other camps like Val-d'Or. How many 6-8 different juniors have been rolled up in many years in the last 5-6 years. Same thing with Red Lake. The Great Bears Battle North. There's been evolution buying the Red Lake mine from Gold Corp. So there's a there's been a lot of activity in these other camps, and Timmins has kind of been sitting there, but because it needed a champion. And with Discovery there, Tony is born and raised in Timmins. He knows the assets extremely well with his past of running Lakeshore and Kirkland. And so, this is a great, timing macroly of the gold price, but you also have this macro tailwind of the Timmins as a whole. So now you enter, Onyx with a new greenfield discovery that's got material grades and widths and completely open, and a tight share structure, great shareholders, a great management team, and we have cash to execute. You really start to check the boxes of how you can play up maybe the next roll up camp, right? So really excited with everything, and appreciate your time, Rob, and I look forward to continue to announce additional results in the near term.
Busy year for Onyx Gold. Thank you, Brock. This was a great conversation, a great update for the company, and I look forward to more results in the coming weeks. Cheers.
Thanks.